Hey everybody, welcome to the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel. Mike Catalana with you solo today. And I woke up on this holiday weekend with a thought of pontificating. Now, those who know me know I wake up with that thought a lot. But what brought it up was Josh Allen this past week when he was asked about the vaccines. Now, I'm going to stop right here and say to you, this is not a podcast. This is not a video about vaccines. This is about Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills and the franchise quarterback position. And the way Josh Allen has handled things, is handling them now, and will handle them in the future. And since I've been around a long time, and Jenna and Dan remind me of that often, I have the perspective of what it was like when Jim Kelly was the quarterback. So I want to talk a little bit about that. And there are some very encouraging signs for Bills fans, I think. And there are things you got to watch out for. So let's start with this. Let's go back to the day when Jim Kelly was the quarterback. Very different circumstances of Jim's arrival in Buffalo, because as many of you know, even if you're too young to remember, you've probably seen the videos or read stories about what happened. Jim got drafted by the Bills. He did not want to come to Buffalo. He went to the USFL. It was a different world, different league. The USFL was actually a rival to the NFL, if that is really something to think about. NFL had a lot of issues. The Bills had a lot of issues. But Jim went to Houston and made money and threw a crazy amount of touchdown passes. Then the league folds and he comes to Buffalo. So at that point, he needed Buffalo. And he came in cocky. That's the way he was. He was good. He knew he was good. He knew the Bills needed him. But he was good. He wasn't perfect from the beginning. But we're talking about a guy who was a little older, who had been a pro for a few years, and certainly had that edge. Now, compare that to Josh Allen when he came to the Bills. He had been at Wyoming. No one expected him to ever be a top 10 pick, whereas Jim Kelly was a star in college at Miami. And then he gets drafted by the Bills, where they move up, and there's a lot of questions as to whether they should have done it. Heck, Jim wasn't even the Bills' first-round pick when he was taken. So what about Josh Allen and the way he arrived in Buffalo? I was at the draft in Dallas. In fact, Jenna Cottrell was with me, and we talked to Josh the day before he was picked. And, you know, he was great. I mean, he was Josh, and he was talking about how he loved the Bills fans and that they were the best in the NFL. And, of course, he stopped and realized he couldn't say that because he didn't know for sure he was going to end up in Buffalo. And we all laughed because at the moment, we thought, well, sure, he's coming to Buffalo. And then you guys will remember what happened that night. That night is when the story came out of the tweets and the things that Josh Allen had said when he was a teenager. And in hindsight, a lot of people have probably already forgotten what that was. But that was a huge deal that morning. And I remember thinking, are they really going to draft this kid? Because we didn't know 100% how close they were with another quarterback or whether they would still take him at that spot, maybe to wait to see if he fell. But they did draft him. And Josh met it head on. He talked about it. He talked about being dumb as a kid and making mistakes. But the issue was, how would his teammates handle it? And I even remember Lorenzo Alexander saying, you know, we'll give him his chance, but, you know, I want to get to know this guy, because you don't know him at all. And then you see things like that are, and I'll say this because you can look it up, so I'd say racial in nature, whether they were meant to be that way or not, that's the way they came out. So what did Josh do? Well, he came to the Bills and he played it under the radar, worked, was almost a nobody in camp. And I know that's not really fair to say, but he was thought of to be the third string guy. I mean, there was even some thought he wasn't going to play. He just did his job. He stayed out of the way, and he assumed the position of the rookie, but not the star rookie, because he wasn't that guy. Now, when we look back on it, it's A.J. McCarron and, you know, Nathan Peterman above him, but they weren't planning on him starting. But he took the right tone. And I think he started to win over his teammates, at least as a guy. And then what happened? Well, you know, there was Nate Peterman played and was bad, and then he took over as the starter. But even then, I think Josh Allen knew what tone to set with the team. He didn't act like the guy because he wasn't the guy yet, by far. He made a lot of mistakes. He made some plays. The Minnesota game, high jumping over top of the linebacker, all that stuff was great. But Josh didn't try to be the guy. Now I'm going to go back to Jim. Jim was confident. There's no doubt about it. But Jim had conflict. In fact, I just got done rewatching the NFL films story on the football life of Bruce Smith. It's great. If you haven't seen it, you probably have. It's fantastic. But in there, they talk about Bruce and Jim coming in and how Bruce came in, as Steve Tasker described, a fat kid who wasn't ready to be a pro. Heck, Bruce describes him that way. And Jim was cocky. And the two of them were not meeting together. In fact, Jim was cocky, I think, to everybody. And I think he would admit that and has admitted that. Tasker talked about it. Other players have said that's who he was. Now, we know what happened. Jim became not just a good teammate, a great, all-time great teammate. He and Bruce became really tight. He and the offense and the defense became the historic franchise that they are, and he's in the Hall of Fame now. But he didn't start out that way. So now I go back again to Josh Allen. With a franchise much like the one Jim took over that were losers. I mean, yes, they had made the playoffs the year before, but you guys know. And Josh handled it right the whole way through. And he was good as a rookie, but there's certainly doubts. But I think he needed to be pushed into being more of the guy. But there's that point when you take over in year 2, and it's like, you're the quarterback. They had other leaders, you remember, but he wasn't ready to be that guy. Lorenzo was one of those leaders, right? Kyle Williams, one of those leaders. But at a certain point, hey, Josh, you're the quarterback. Now, year 2, he didn't play well enough to assume that role of the franchise guy. He was the starting quarterback. And he was okay. We know that. And then we come into last year, and he couldn't have handled anything better. He became that leader. He became that voice of the franchise. But he never, at least publicly, never wavered from team first, my teammates first. I think naturally that's the way he is, but he didn't waver from that. And his players didn't just accept him as the guy. They love him for being that guy. And not just the young guys coming in. You know the way he is with Stephon Diggs. I mean, they're inseparable now. Cole Beasley would run and has run through virtual walls for him. His offensive line loves him. Listen to Deion Dawkins at any point. And I think in large part, it begins with him knowing who he is at the time he's that guy. And I think Josh has done a great job with that. And that's why he got through that season as not just the best player, Diggs was great too, Trey White, all those guys, but one of the best players in the league. But he didn't lose the room at all because he maintained that perspective with the Bills. Coaches love him. I mean, he and Daboll and Sean McDermott, everybody, the franchise is behind him. No doubt about it. And now we go into this year. And the reason I'm coming back to this is the issue with the vaccines. Now, again, it's not a vaccine podcast here. It's not a vaccine video to tell you that he should or shouldn't do this. But I really do believe Josh is in I won't say difficult spot. I will say one that he has to walk the line a little bit because I don't know whether he's gotten the vaccine or not. There are times I have listened to him talk and think, I don't think he's done it. And other times I think there's no doubt he's gotten it. In either case, much like some other big name athletes, even as big as LeBron James, he's not going to give his opinion publicly. I don't know if individually, if a player comes up and asks him, I think if a player on the team came up and asked him, I think Josh would be honest with him. But he's keeping that private because he can't just walk in the room and say, I'm Josh Allen. I got the vaccine. You guys better get it too. That's not going to fly. It's not going to fly in that room because this is more than just a football issue. But I do think the guys will follow him and they'll follow his lead. And I think eventually, for the good of the team, again, this is not all individually about your own beliefs, but we know it's probably based on the NFL rules better if more players are vaccinated because You avoid sitting out of games, you avoid the close contact, you get less restrictions in the room. But I think they'll follow his lead. So while people have been critical of him for either saying he would get more information or critical of him for not saying he got it or did not get it, I do think he's handling it like a leader. It's different for Sean McDermott. It's different for Brandon Beane. They have to get the vaccine. That's part of the NFL rules. It's different with the players. And I'm going to give Josh Allen a yes on the way he is handling things. Look, I got the vaccine, but at my age and the position I'm in, you're right, I should be getting it, and I feel confident doing that, but I'm not telling anybody else. I'm just talking to you about the way it is for the football team and the way it is when your team leader sets a tone. And I do think the good thing on this team is that they do have good internal discussions. Now, I'll go back to Jim. And, I mean, come on. They were the bickering Bills. They had blow-ups. Jim became a star as Thurman and Bruce and Andre. They were all becoming stars. They all wanted attention. They did. They had a lot of confidence. I mean, there was the whole talk of who's the Michael Jordan of the franchise. And we were at the Super Bowl and Thurman saying, I'm the Michael Jordan of the franchise. I mean, that's who they were. And now you see them all together laughing about those things. But at the time, it could have caused problems. But Jim kept them together. And through the years, he became more and more of a leader and brought the whole franchise up. And Josh is on his way to doing that. But what Jim Kelly had that Josh doesn't have yet, he's won games, had a great season. But when you win like Jim Kelly, guys are following you. They're following you through everything. And that's the next step for Josh. Yes, they did win 2 playoff games this past year. In fairness, he wasn't spectacular in either of those games, and they lost, and he had a rough game against the Chiefs. The whole team did. But he hasn't gotten that win yet. That's coming. I think it's coming. I think he played well in the Colts game, okay in the Baltimore game, okay in the Chiefs game without a lot of help. They're going to need him to be better, and I think it's coming. But that's the part where your teammates don't just follow you as a player. They love you as a player. And I think that's happening for him. And there's going to be something else Josh Allen's going to need to handle, and it's coming soon. And that's when the new contract comes. And that's when he becomes different than the other guys. There's no question. Look, he's already elevated from rookie to starter to winner to franchise quarterback and star. The next step is to pay him like the franchise quarterback. And that impacts the team in 2 different ways. One, the more money that goes to Josh, no matter how they work it out, the less there is for everybody else to split. And I do not believe players begrudge the guy, but you better keep up with that. He knows it. All the quarterbacks know it, right? Some guys haven't handled it as well. We just saw what happened with Goff and Wentz, and they're both gone from their spot. Again, I'm not saying that's happening with Josh Allen. I'm saying is there is pressure when you get that deal, right? There are other guys everybody just expects it to get done, and then they get paid too, much like what's happened in Kansas City. But it does change things. And then also it adds pressure on the individual player himself, not just in the room, but to himself, because Josh Allen has always been that underdog. Well, when you're a star and you're getting paid like a star, you can say you're an underdog, but you're not an underdog anymore. So he'll need to navigate that too. And I really do believe that is something the best of the best learn how to do. And also, I think it's taken Josh a little while, and I think it's better to be maybe a step late than a step early, to accept the way you're looked at as a number 1 pick, to accept the way you're looked at as the starting quarterback, to accept the way you're looked at as the guy, to accept that you're the franchise quarterback. I'm saying it's a good thing to be maybe a day late than a day early on that. It's more like his teammates are saying, Josh, you're the guy, and then he's the guy. I think he's ready for it, but I think he needs to be pushed into that. Jim Kelly didn't need anybody to tell him that. Man, you guys should have seen Jim in the day. First of all, he's an awesome guy, and he's been through a lot, and he's different. As we all get older, we hope we're a little bit different. But Jim was a tough, cocky, SOB in his day. And he didn't need anybody to tell him anything. He's a winner, though. A winner. I know they lost the 4 Super Bowls, but he got them there 4 times. Just think about that. 5 championship games that they played in. And by the way, they won 4 of them and lost the other one. So he's done that all the time. That's the next step for Josh. But like I said, I think he's accepted that and been teammate first and star quarterback second. But when you get paid, and everybody looks at you differently. And those numbers, you walk in the room, it's those numbers. Those numbers are big. So that'll be the next step for him. So as you listen to Josh Allen now, and he navigates all these things with the team, with his coaching staff, with his offense, and also with the defense. Again, all eyes are on him. I think the COVID thing he handled really well with the whole team. I think the vaccine thing, again, they have a good room, and that's important. Because if things start to splinter, everybody's going to look towards the quarterback. So I think consciously he's been thinking of that, and I think he made a smart move. I hope it's all good for this year. I hope it's great for the fans. I hope all that stuff goes well, because this could be a special year. But it's a really interesting dynamic watching how Josh Allen went from the kid from playing at Wyoming to superstar quarterback in the NFL and maybe leading this team to the Super Bowl. Hey, thanks for being with me today on the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel. Dan Fates, Jenna Cottrell with me all the time here. We have tons of content. We would like you to comment, like, subscribe. Go ahead and subscribe. Then you'll be getting all of our videos. When the players and coaches talk, we get the videos up fast. They're on this site. When anything happens, we have our reaction to it. And then when the mood hits me like it did today, I like to do a little pontificating. So thanks to all of you for listening to me today. Let's see what happens when the Bills get going, and maybe soon we'll know exactly what's going to happen with training camp and where the location will be. So for our entire Buffalo Plus team, I'm Mike Catalana. Thanks for watching.